Good day, I am Herbert Spencer. Welcome to Socio Exploration. In this video, I will be taking you to my life journey and my contributions to sociology. Though I became known for my intellectual contributions, my personal life was far more modest and solitary. I was born on 27th April 1820 in Derby, England, and known as the second father of sociology, father of social Darwinism, and philosopher of evolutionary sociology.
I was the only son of William George Spencer and Harriet Holmes. My father was a teacher and a staunch dissenter from the Church of England, and he raised me in an atmosphere of rationalism, independence, and skepticism of authority. He taught me mathematics and experimental science at home. Much of my early education came not from institutions, but from books and conversations. I never married. In truth, I was a deeply private man, and relationships, especially romantic ones, were difficult for me. I had a long and complex friendship with the novelist George Eliot, Mary Ann Evans, with whom I shared both admiration and intellectual companionship. Some speculated there was affection between us, but nothing ever came of it. I remained a lifelong bachelor, devoting my energies almost entirely to my studies and writing.
Health was a constant struggle for me. I suffered from chronic insomnia, nervous exhaustion, and psychosomatic illnesses, what might today be considered a mix of anxiety and chronic fatigue. These ailments plagued me for decades and frequently interrupted my work. I often had to travel to escape the stresses of urban life, spending long periods in the countryside or near the sea to recuperate.
Financially, I was never wealthy, but my writings gradually found a wide readership. Thanks to subscriptions from admirers, some quite prominent, I was able to fund the ambitious project of my 10-volume System of Synthetic Philosophy, written over many years. Despite my growing reputation, I preferred to avoid public appearances and academic institutions. I rejected formal honors and kept my distance from the growing world of professional academia. I lived a quiet, reclusive life, focused on thought rather than fame. In my later years, I became increasingly pessimistic about the direction of politics and society. Though I had long championed liberty and progress, I feared that modern civilization was growing too bureaucratic and morally rigid. I died on December 8, 1903, in Brighton, England, aged 83. I was buried in London's Highgate Cemetery, near the grave of my friend and fellow philosopher George Eliot. Theory of social evolution is one of my most enduring contributions is the idea that society evolves just like biological organisms do. Long before Darwin published On the Origin of Species, I was already writing about how human societies progress from simple to complex forms. I argued that early societies are militant, centered on survival, conquest, and hierarchy. But as they develop, they become industrial, focused on cooperation, individual freedom, and economic productivity. Just as living organisms grow by differentiating and specializing their parts, like cells and organs, societies evolve by developing more complex institutions, like the economy, government, education, and religion, all of which work together to maintain social order. In essence, society is an organism. It grows, differentiates, and adapts over time. I believe that society could best be understood through an organic analogy by comparing it to a biological organism. In a living body, various organs, heart, lungs, brain, perform specialized functions but are interdependent. Likewise, in society, different institutions, education, law, economy, perform unique roles that ensure the survival and stability of the whole system. Just as a disease in one organ affects the entire body, dysfunction in one part of society, for example, crime, poverty, can impact the overall balance. This idea would later influence the structural functionalists who came after me. Though many people associate theory of survival of the fittest with Charles Darwin, I was the one who coined it first. I believed that competition among individuals and groups leads to the natural selection of the most capable and adaptable. In society, I argued, those who succeed economically or socially do so because they are more fit to handle the demands of life. I believed that government intervention, welfare, aid to the poor, might actually weaken society by preserving the unfit. Let the strong thrive, and the weak naturally fade. Admittedly, some misused this idea to justify social inequality and imperialism, something I never explicitly promoted. but I did believe that social evolution must be allowed to take its natural course. From my theory of laissez-faire and individualism, I was a strong advocate for individual liberty and limited government. I believed society progresses most when individuals are free to pursue their own interests without interference. I opposed heavy taxation, state-run education, and bureaucratic control. I believed too much state interference stifles natural growth and weakens self-reliance. In my view, the best societies were those with the least amount of coercion. As societies evolve, they move from being simple and uniform to being complex and specialized. This involves two processes. Differentiation. Institutions and roles become more specialized. For example, in primitive society, one person may be farmer, priest, and soldier. In modern society, these are distinct roles. Integration. Despite specialization, all parts remain interconnected and must be organized in harmony. This, to me, is the mark of a mature society, where individual freedom and systemic unity coexist. Throughout my life, I was devoted to the task of making sense of society, the natural world, and the laws that govern both. I wrote extensively, sometimes too much, some would say, but always with the hope of bringing all fields of knowledge into a unified scientific framework. Here are the works I consider most important. First, Social Statics, 1851. This was my first major work, and in it I laid out my belief in individual liberty, the right to ignore the state, and the idea that human society would gradually progress toward a state of perfect freedom and justice. It was in this book that I first suggested the idea of natural laws guiding social development, a view that would guide all my later writings. Second, The Principles of Psychology, 1855. Before psychology was a formal science, I attempted to build it upon evolutionary foundations. I explored how consciousness and behavior evolved and tried to connect mental processes with biological adaptation. Though not as well remembered today as Darwin's work, this book helped bridge biology and social thought. Third, First Principles, 1862. This was the foundation of my synthetic philosophy, where I explained the law of evolution, a universal law, I argued, that applies to the cosmos, to life, to mind, and to society. This work was not limited to sociology. It aimed to unify physics, biology, psychology, and ethics under one grand scientific theory. Fourth, The Principles of Sociology, 1876-1896. This was the core of my sociological thought. Spanning 3 volumes, I examined everything from kinship and religion to politics, industry, and professions. I argued that societies evolved from militant, coercive structures to industrial, voluntary, cooperative forms. I also discussed social institutions as evolving parts of a complex organism, each playing a role in maintaining balance and function. Fifth, The Man versus the State, 1884, a political classic. In this work, I warned against the growth of government control and socialist tendencies in modern politics. I argued that too much regulation weakens self-reliance and threatens liberty. I believed that freedom and responsibility go hand in hand, and that society thrives best when left to evolve naturally. Sixth, Education, Intellectual, Moral, and Physical, 1861. In this short but widely read book, I emphasized the importance of science-based education and learning through experience. I believed education should not merely teach obedience, but foster independent thought and moral development. This book was especially popular in the United States and influenced educational reformers well into the 20th century. All my writings were part of a larger mission, to show that the universe, including society, is governed by knowable, scientific laws, and that progress is the result of natural development, not imposed planning. Though I did not live a conventional or socially rich life, I found meaning in the pursuit of knowledge. To me, understanding the structure of the world, how nature and society evolve, was the highest calling. If I seemed distant or abstract, it was because I lived more in ideas than in events. Do like, subscribe, and click the bell icon for further notifications. Thank you and have a great day.